Welcome everyone. My name is Michelle and I'm part of the Syndicate, and we're going to give a bit longer presentation later, but we're going to start with some performances. And the first one is that we're going to start by listening to a sound piece. It's an extract and it lasts for 7 minutes and it's called Challenging Listening. And I encourage you to try to lean into it and try to sense it, and if you can, practice deep active listening.
Death to the Death Star. I don't want to move to Mars. A sensoric resistance movement. Death to the Death Star is a tech fix, a barren planet in Star Wars. The Resistance work for life, a mycelium stretching out and embracing the planet with small threads of sensitivity pulsating with energy. We fight with sensibility and solidarity against a calculated mechanism, against a profit machine driven by competition, a mechanism that, like a deity, must grow infinitely and rule over all organic life while sustaining itself by organic life. A voracious and ignorant machine, a mechanism that will drain all life from the planet as it grows endlessly, while the worshippers of this mechanism will play with creating their own artificial copy of the ecosystem on the barren planet Mars, playing with ideas of constructing their own artificial version of Earth, a small paradise on an uninhabitable planet, a paradise for the few, when everything has been drained. The resistance is subtle. The resistance is soft, the opposite of the hard and rigid, competitive code. The soft, living body and earth gather and weave resistance. For a long time, this calculating mechanism has ruled. For a long time, it has destroyed life on many levels, leaving the planet with bleak, infected patches, wastelands, and malignant growths. For a long time, we, the secure and well-adjusted, have ignored how areas have been ravaged, how local cultures and life have been subjected to the mechanisms in an unequal battle against an intangible, ruthless power and exploitation. Now, here, is our soft, profound, and fierce resistance. We do not fight, we bleed into the earth. We bleed with the earth and with each other. We bleed with the exploited and the exhausted. Our blood is nothing, and it is everything. It is frustration, love, and the search for courage. Courage must help us let go of our fear and comfort, help us fight for others and all those and all that are crushed under the power of exploitation and ruthlessness. For all those whose lives considered to be of no value, whose lives are drowned, starved, poisoned, and eroded, human and more than human. Our resistance is lifelines that connect us. We form mycelia and find nerve threads to link us together. Our resistance is lifelines that connect us. We find pathways and new constructions, meet mycelia and grow nerve threads to connect us. Our sensoric resistance flows with all living. Our resistance connects us.
Welcome, everyone. What a moving start to this discussion. Collaborative and performative conversations already underway. My name is Rebecca. I am a member of a number of degrowth groups and networks here in Copenhagen, including where I work at the University of Copenhagen. I'm also a big fan of these people here sitting with us. So I'd like to start by warmly introducing them. First, Signe Vad. Signe is a visual artist, a curator, an activist, an organizer, a member of a number of groups. The Syndicate of Creatures, of course, which has organized the event today. Also Extinction Rebellion, co-organizer of the Degrowth Festival, often held in September in this very building. Maybe some of you have been a part of that. Michelle Appelros. Michelle, you described yourself as a human ecologist and also more things, musician, and I think we just experienced that, also a performance artist, a queer mom, a member of the Nordic Climate Story Lab, maybe some of you have heard of that, a platform for filmmakers around climate storytelling, a member of the art and intervention group Syndicate of Creatures as well, along with their third member who is running the videotaping, and a degrowth and environmental justice activist. And finally, please join me in warmly welcoming to Copenhagen, Anitra Nelson, a scholar activist joining us from the University of Melbourne, Australia, not Melbourne, Florida, where I actually grew up. Nobody knows that. And Anitra, I know you are a prolific writer, and you helped me by summarizing some of your recent works, including Housing for Degrowth, that came out in 2018, Food for Degrowth in 2021, co-writing with Vincent Léger, Exploring Degrowth, a Critical Guide, that was from, 2020, and Anitra is here also because of a forthcoming book that you are letting people know about across Western Europe, and that is a Routledge handbook for degrowth, which is an edited volume with contributions from a number of folks, including some here in the room, in case you want to pick their brains a little later. So 3 people that know a tremendous amount about the topics at hand: art, collaboration, degrowth. And how we're going to use the time ahead is to spend around 35-40 minutes hearing from you 3 in particular on a number of issues in relation to art and feminist degrowth. And then at that point, we're going to open it up to hear your reactions. We'll start by inviting you just to react to what has come up so far with somebody near you. And then we open it up. So not a formal Q&A, but just a dialogue, which is, I know, also important to you for a space like this. Yeah. And to get us started, I would be grateful to hear from you 3 in turn, briefly, about how you describe yourselves as creative artists, and how, too, did you become interested in degrowth. And Signe, would you get us started?
Yeah, I can start. Thank you, Rebecca. And like we wanted to have a conversation more. We don't like this way of setting up the chairs, but there were so many people who had registered tickets, so there was no other way. We couldn't make circles and organic structures, unfortunately. Yeah, it's so much on my mind. Yes, I was introduced to degrowth by Michelle, who was introduced to degrowth at her human ecology study, I think actually the first year already. And the first thing we did was making a radio program where I was interviewing Michelle about degrowth for 1.5 hours. We made it called Radio Pythia during Corona. And as soon as she explained these ideas, it was like the most logic thinking. The text that I read was the sensoric resistance movement was something I wrote in 18, so long before I knew anything about degrowth. So when I was introduced to degrowth, it was like so logic that here is the solutions that I needed, and that's why we started working with degrowth connected to art, because it's part of it is, in my opinion, without words, like the sensory experience of how you take the world in. To enhance that, we need, in my belief, and art can do that, and art can also like expand the fantasy of something. So that's how we've been working with that in the Degrowth Festival, and that's how I've been working with even before I knew degrowth. That was kind of the path that I had found for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, what was the question?
Well, yeah, sort of, your artistic journey and also toward degrowth.
Yeah. When I learned about degrowth first, I also felt that it was tremendous hope for me. I felt this is like the left-wing updated philosophy for me. This is it contains, it's so simple, but it's also, it's so complex. Just radical rethinking, I think. And we immediately took on some concepts that we found, like decolonizing the imaginary became my kind of circling point for a lot of things, and then also nomadic utopianism and other stuff that was just so simple and so coherent with everything that we have been doing before also. So it just well aligned with everything that we were doing, but it also gave us new thoughts and new ideas, and it felt like the hope that we were looking for a lot, I think. And I think that with the art, I lost it now.
It's okay. I think that was a great answer. I just
yeah.
realized this chair is probably for me.
Yeah,
So
it is.
And just before we turn to Anitra, I just want to say, since we're flat in this room, if you can't see and you want to come a bit closer, there's quite a few chairs up here as well. Lena, I'm looking at you. So please, Anitra, we'd be delighted now to hear your journey and also your, I guess we could say, an identity as an artist and how creativity serves you in your degrowth pathway.
Yeah, sure. So when I was at primary school, I started writing poems, and I was also oil painting from when I was 7 years old. And arts was a really important outlet for me, and the same kind of, like, I think the visionary kind of nature of arts was the thing that really attracted me to it. I still write poems. I only kind of sketch now, yeah, just sort of like in a practical sense, illustrations for some of my books and stuff like that. But I also went to film school. It was screenwriting that basically was my emphasis. So I've made short docos.
No.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm not sure everybody
Is
can
it-
hear it.
It is on, yeah, I guess hold it just a little
Yeah, it's
closer.
on. Okay. Sorry about that. So over the last several years, I've made some short documentaries, and one of them, some people say, is very like a vision of degrowth, although it was written from the third chapter of a Beyond Money book that I wrote, which is really looking at ways in which we could have non-monetary futures, given that this kind of liberates social and ecological values to be met, which are the big challenges that we really have today, and other challenges that basically degrowth addresses, and that is socio-political inequities and ecological unsustainabilities. So I suppose, I mean, I've also written and directed some performances of a play, but I think that my creativity really expresses itself as much in my academic work as it does in a more hands-on creative arts fashion, like with A World Beyond Money.
I would love an example of that, if something comes to your mind about how your artistic sensibility also manifests in academic work. That may not be of interest to everyone in the room, but for some of us that is it's an intriguing idea.
Well, I think the point is that I come from a social sciences kind of background, even though when I was at school I was really a maths science kind of person.
Math?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. But I mean, that was helpful with economics, but then I became an anti-economist because I realised that economics really doesn't have anything to do with maths, it's just pretending to be like maths. I think that what I found in the different disciplines that I've written in is that people very much take on frameworks, that they inherit frameworks that already exist. And I think that I've been more prepared to challenge the kinds of wisdom that I've been presented with. Yeah, so I came from doing undergraduate work in Latin American studies and was looking at, for instance, Mexico's foreign public debt. And what seemed really amazing to me was that no one really questioned what money was. They talked about why people should repay the debt and why debt was really great because, like housing, you know, you get the credit, you can get what you want now, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So you opened up the box, you thought more creatively about what money even is, as a symbol, what it stands for, what it serves. Yeah, it's a great start. I'm also very interested in your work on that. I think this would be a good moment, though, to address something that's in the title of this session today, and that is the feminist of feminist degrowth. And I would be grateful if all three of you would, in brief, react to that, and in acknowledgement that not necessarily all degrowth conceptions or conceptualizations, praxis, embrace feminist perspectives, theory, praxis. What does it mean to you to call this a feminist event and a feminist degrowth?
Yeah. First of all, we've been talking like feminist degrowth is in reality saying degrowth, because it actually can't be degrowth not being feminist, in my opinion. Not just opinion, in my theoretical understanding of what degrowth is, as it centers environmental justice and socioeconomic justice. And so that's one thing, and then we decided to call it that anyway. It feels like that we need to enhance the feminist part of it, and I'm not sure if this is for everyone. Like I just feel often now in degrowth there is. I've even heard a degrowth scholar saying that degrowth is only for economists, or that it's only for scholars, and that's very not much my. That's not my view of it at all. I think it's for everyone. I think degrowth is the most important philosophical theory, and also practice, that it's much more than that, and that it's. I mean, one of the things that we do with the Degrowth Festival is also trying to channel it to the people or to civil society, and engage everybody in degrowth discussions of how we can use these kind of concepts and the radical rethinking, and so I think it's very important to attack that in a way, or like be radical with it, and also just really pronounce that it's feminist, and that it can't be anything else.
I think that what I learned from scholars, because I started being an artist and I picked up on a lot of academia and theory and philosophy, so I feel a little bit like I'm coming from the outside. But how I understand it, and how I understood it in conversation with Michelle, is very much that this is the antithesis of growth, of competition, of expansion, and the antithesis is care. I also understood it from one of the talks that Katarina did for our Degrowth Festival, talking about that when they were looking into what feminist degrowth is, then they found out that at the core of that is care thinking. And care thinking is actually not just feminist degrowth, it is the core of the whole thinking of degrowth, that we go into the world in a different way, but that we go with each other in a different way, that there's revolutionary in a very subtle way of something that we all take for granted as the most natural thing, actually, that we have to care for each other now, and we have to help each other along, and we have to find a way together. And when we got the chance to make the Degrowth Festival here, it was really fantastic, because we had the Culture House has a lot of people come here because they're interested in climate and biodiversity. They have built up like a group of many people, and normally the people who come to a degrowth event is scholars or activists, or scholars, activists, and maybe some artists, but not necessarily, but it's coming more. And suddenly we could do a much more broader variety of mix of people, and then they could meet and talk together sideways, you know. And that's very difficult to create these spaces where we meet people from different sectors and talk solutions with them. And for us, it was like the whole core of caring together with each other about how we go into a radically different world. I think, and that is of course the core in feminist thinking also, as I understand it. For me it's two things of the same. And I think that, and I, from my not scholar position, can say that I think that the people who say that this is just a theory or an economic theory, that's because there's so many things about the sociability in life that they are not really looked into and understood. I can't say understood. Maybe they have. Maybe they're just different. I mean, it's not nice to say that people don't understand things. But the sociability is, in my opinion, like the economy. The economy that's going to save us.
Yes, I think that what I feel about degrowth and what got fed into editing the handbook, because I was able to curate it, was specifically to bring out some of the feminist roots of degrowth. So Maria Mies and other people in the Bielefeld School of feminist thinking in Germany were already talking about the key importance of collective sufficiency, of social reproduction, and connecting how people in the global north are dominated by economics and forms of development, and how that has a perverse and poor dynamic with the global south. And so this is back in the 1970s. So a lot of the histories of degrowth will draw on the masculine versions of Andrei Gortz or Ivan Illich or whatever. But in actual fact, there's a whole realm of feminist degrowth. And so in the German chapter, which in the Handbook of Degrowth, we have a whole part that's on the ways in which degrowth developed in particular regions, such as France, Italy, Greece, and in Germany. And so fortunately, that particular chapter actually draws out a lot of this. And then there are two Germans, Andrea Vetter and Matthias Vesterer, who write a chapter in the practices section of the Degrowth Handbook that's on conviviality and commoning, as well as we've got a Czech chapter that's very much on caring economies. So all of these things are absolutely essential to degrowth. And it's more of a kind of what they call décroissance à la française, is the anti-economic and bringing us back to what are the real essentials in our lives and giving us quality of life. And I believe that this is also like a very creative kind of milieu.
And Anitra, did you have any, I was just thinking about the question was around the feminism of degrowth, and when you invoke things like the importance of commons and commoning, for instance, which I understand very much as a feminist issue, the politics of the commons, but maybe you could just remind us explicitly of the importance of conviviality and commons and so forth for a feminist degrowth, just to link back in, to make it explicit.
Yeah, I think that from a feminist point of view, commoning is really important. For instance, and one thing that I didn't mention but I think is really important, and again, although I did mention it in terms of the Bielefeld School, but the decolonisation is all kind of part of this, and bringing back ancient ways that that people did common, where women would do a lot of work together, and those kind of connections, I think, are actually really important. And they're really important in going forward, because what we find is that quite a lot of the prefigurative experimentation with degrowth, such as Vincent has co-founded a cooperative that's called Cargonomia, that's in Budapest. And Austes Vendels, which is in East Berlin. These kinds of formations of collective households that do community supported agriculture, bike repairs, bike making, all this whole range of kinds of things. These all involve dropping ideas of private property and using things on a needs basis. And they're quite outward looking. So the whole concept of commoning underscores the way forward of collective provisioning.
And I guess of the few precious commons that remain, that need to be cared for and nourished and expanded, it is those with the least access to things like property rights and other types of privileges that depend most on them today. So it's just another reminder why that is a feminist issue. I was thinking maybe we could turn to more of the performative aspect of this discussion. How can we see degrowth in art, in practice, in performance, in content? And I think this might be a moment in which, Anitra, you have a poem you are going to share with us.
Can I read out the snail thing too?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, as you know, the snail is the symbol of degrowth, and that draws on Ivan Illich's work. In one of the articles that I co-wrote, we talk about this. So, in our growth economies, the biggest is the best. Scaling up is essential. The amount of work done is more important than the quality of the work. To work as slow as a snail is a damning insult. The symbol of degrowth, the snail, decenters an infinite growth orientation and brings us back to earth. The snail's protection, its shell, its home, spirals out as it grows, then stops at an optimum size. The snail slip-slides along as snails do, secretly, effectively fitting into and helping recreate healthy ecosystems. Don't underestimate the work of the snail in its continuous circular economy, eating rotting leaves, other dead plant matter, animal dung, and even snail and slug eggs. Ultimately, snails too become food, attracting insects, earthworms, birds, and mammals, even human ones.
Thank you. And now you turn to a poem that you wrote, is that right?
Yeah, so this poem I actually wrote for the occasion of the 9th International Degrowth Festival, conference in Zagreb, which was in 2023. And it's called Degrowth in 4 movements. 1. Growth proliferates, demanding, degrading, derailing, deficient, destroying, degenerating, detonating, demineralizing, depressing. Degrowth devolves, deconstructs, decentralizes, deinstitutionalizes, decolonizes, dematerializes, demilitarizes, and decommodifies. Degrowth diffuses and designs. Decide, destination, degrowth. 2. Fast, slow, slower, very slow, perfectly slow, passionately slow. 3. Momentarily as individuals, singly, together as a group, collectively, as a community, communally, locally, universally, infinitely. 4. No gladiators, no meteors. We ignore spectacle. Earth's hot molten fire burned us into existence. We birthed underground as termites turning, worming and taking flight. Rain flows through our veins, winds expand and escape from our lungs. We tend and eat plants. We are the compost fertilizing the future. We are the untamed heart of paradise.
Thank you. I've had the pleasure to experience some of your degrowth in art experiences. I'm thinking of the food immersive experience, for instance. Could you tell us about some of your own concrete projects and, you know, get the appetite whet for the forthcoming conversation too, because I suspect a lot of people in this room have some great experiences to share as well.
Yeah, some concrete examples of I was in a discussion the other day with some other artists, some colleagues who've been artists for many years, it was as if we were in two different worlds. Because when I talked about the problems of the earth, it was depressive for them, which is, of course, it is very depressive. But it's also, in my opinion, the most playful platform that we as artists and everybody who uses art to rethink, to resense, to try to connect, to use whatever, a meal. It could be, we were making an event last year where people were served vegan food in very, very nice 4 servings, like with a formation of tables that was almost an installation, like a square in a big hall with white tablecloth, and there came this like very beautiful colored, intense colored vegan food that was served by waiters, and in the middle of the square there were some performances going on. And it's a way to like take every level, take your like your taste, your sensual experience of the plate, of the food, of sitting there in a different environment, having to talk with strangers, and also for a moment stop and take in some. I believe that every time we perform or we go to an exhibition and it's kind of reaching us, the art, then we get into a sensoric place in our heads that is some other kind of vibe. Maybe slow, maybe burning, maybe, I don't know. And to take people there with you as an artist is a very common thing. That's very much the tools that we work with. But every time we do it now, it's with the mindset of trying to influence people, move them a little bit in the direction of sensing together, expanding the fantasies of which kind of world we can live in. It can be through text or like sensoric experiences like food or sound or visuals. Sometimes it's very dry and intellectual, but most times we always try to have this sensoric experience, a sensory experience as part of it, to kind of hit us on outside like the common language in with other other kinds of senses at the same time. And it's all of it for me is to expand the room, to expand our imagination, to expand our idea of what is it to be in the world. I'm so internalized, structured by the system I grew up in. I grew up in the big city here, and it's I've tried to imagine different ways of being in the world is really difficult. And I think that these sensoric experiences and mental rethinking, rewording can help us. And the thing was, in this conversation with the artist the other day, they would say that I put art in front of a wagon for something specific. And my comment was, yeah, well, we are in a very specific situation right now. And I think that's a very beautiful, interesting wagon. You know, I don't care if they're afraid, you know, that I don't reduce art. You know, I think we expand the world by using the art right now in this direction.
Yeah, I was thinking so many things. It was great what you were saying, but like, yeah, we have together, but also separately, worked a lot with this the sensoric or the sensorial, as a, like you also, the poem or the manifest you read about how the sensorial resistance or the sensoric resistance, and this is something that in the Cree Syndicate we think about it a lot in terms of being the antidote, or yeah, like both in like terms of the Cartesian dualism, or like this rationality, or the death of nature. I don't know if you've read these kind of books, or the Caliban and the Witch and so forth. These kind of feminist, or comes a lot from feminist theory, but it's also other theory, ecological theory, that we're detached as humans from nature. And we've been thinking about otherness and othering processes, but also how then to reverse this, how to connect us, and how to find another language, poetic language, or other words, or other kinds of communication through art, but also through, can we create events to be art, to be sort of sensoric movement, and this also springs from our belief in that art can push people and can open new spaces in heads and help decolonize the imaginary, but through other kinds of experiences. So, for example, when we do the Degrowth Festival, or when we do a lot of things, or workshops and so forth, we think a lot about the room and about the visual experience, or the food, or the sort of, also, that's how it gets entangled also with feminism for us, is that we think of what are the people coming, like how there should be room for people with kids, for example. There should be room for people that are stressed or tired, or like, can it be too much? Like, the content is important, but it's also important there are spaces for withdrawal, or sort of, how can we sort of, we had this, just to give an example, we had on the first festival, we had pins, like metal pins with the Degrowth Festival, and we were thinking back and forth, like, is this like commodifying? Are we like using money for something that is, are we doing this? We keep checking our motivations for everything, but our essential idea with the pins was that we were giving people a sign so that they can identify each other and start conversations. So this was an idea of how we could help people start conversations and socialize with each other, for example. And then we thought it was worth it to pay this company and stuff. So we diverged from sort of being perhaps super sustainable, but then on the other hand, there's also like social sustainability, or like, why are we doing this? And so it's about thinking of all of the things in unity. And also, to give another example, like for this, the artwork that I brought today, or like the sound piece, I was saying to Signe, to be honest, yesterday, I'm like, I feel like I need to read a text because it's so subtle. It's like, can people really understand that I'm an artist? Like, my ego was turning, into this. I want to really be showing what I can do. And then I'm like, oh, that's right. Now I'm into that kind of colonized, better, faster, stronger kind of, and I want to reverse that. I want it to be as subtle as possible, actually. I want to intrigue people to reverse this kind of idea of how we're supposed to be or act, and then instead, like, what happens if we just listen? And this, like, it's just to give an example of my own trying to decolonize my own sort of modernity brain in how I function in this world, but then trying to reverse that and encourage deep listening and subtleness, or just that's good enough, you know, sound. And it's actually a quite intriguing piece in itself. Right? Yeah.
What's been important for me in experiencing some of your installations or experiences that you've created is their highly emotional nature. That's not suppressed, that's up front, because our emotions are key signals when things are wrong, or when we're passionate about things, or when we need to dwell on things. And we know that artistic expression and creativity are devalued under patriarchal growth economies, but I would also say too the masculine rationalism of certain versions of even green transition or even degrowth too. So bringing that back in reminds me too of the feminism of your degrowth. That's also deeply in touch with our emotional states and how they can lead us to act rather than neglecting them. I want to turn to that last sort of suggested discussion point that Anitra, you had suggested a couple weeks ago, where you remind us of Emma Goldman's famous experience of being laughed at, derided for dancing, right? And maybe some of you have heard it, if I can't dance, it's not my revolution. And two of the best dancers I have ever met are on this stage right now. It is a joy to watch you in motion. And Emma Goldman went on, "I do not believe that a cause which stood for a beautiful ideal, for anarchism, for release and freedom from conventions and prejudice, should demand the denial of life and joy. If it meant that, I do not want it." Let's talk a little bit about music and other outlets. What styles are you into? What songs and dances do you think express or might articulate your degrowth?
I'll just say very quickly. Look, I think also because I've been involved with making films, and I'm so aware of the kinds of material and energy demands of those forms of art. What the short doco that I wrote on A World Beyond Money is actually just stills, and it's been very well edited, so it has movement through it. I've also lost the question.
Well, the problem, maybe it's also sources of joy and creativity, so it could be music.
Yeah, so if you ask me what might be quite natural forms of degrowth, music, songs, whatever, I think of things like a cappella, which I sort of find really authentic, and jazz, maybe, I don't know. It's still to come, I don't know.
Yeah, I am a very serious person. It's very difficult for me to make humorous art. If it's humorous, it's always really subtle. It's like so nobody really discovered it except myself and maybe Michelle. But I have a T-shirt with that quote. I know it's tacky, but I really enjoy, because I'm so serious, I really enjoy when others can bring humor, let's say, into the revolution, into this very serious time we are in, with a big fucking job ahead of us. We need the joy. I mean, that's also part of this whole sociability. We need to be able to laugh about it and enjoy it on the ride, because that's what it's all about. It's about like finding beautiful new patterns that's really fun to be with. Or if not, then we'll have to do it fun. So some of you will have to with a little bit better ways of expressing humoristic things. I can't even find out of explaining it, but something to make something funny, come along and help us, us very serious persons. And I think that dancing, I don't think that there is a specific type of anything that's degrowth. I think it depends on your mindset. And I think that dancing is also a way just to relieve and to dance with other people. It took me a long time to just let go. I was very shy, self-centered, and it still happens to me sometimes. I get really self-centered on a dance floor, and then I can't find the rhythm, and I'm afraid I'm out of rhythm, and I've been fighting that a lot until I came to a New Year's party with some friends, and I tell you, it wasn't my kind of music, but it was my kind of people, obviously, because they were just dancing like crazy to all kind of crazy music. And I was like, well, and I just recovered from a cancer treatment, and I was just like, what the heck? I mean, why not? And that helped me a lot to just sing, what the heck? And I believe that that's kind of the I don't know, for me it's very life energy to go beyond all my self-centered or is that right or wrong or ooh, and just think, what the heck? I mean, we're gonna have fun. And I love it when somebody else is joining the dance floor and persuade me to dare one more time to go there and go crazy. Anybody have any?
Yeah, I'm quite unpolitically correct sometimes, incorrect with the kind of music I like. I like techno a lot. Rave music is fun, but in the Degrowth Festival we usually also we use noise music because it's very immersive and very like another language. Almost you get into a meditative state. We like a lot of noise music because you can't really just listen to it. You are more like experiencing it because it's not music, it's more sounds. So I really like that. And then, yeah, whatever makes you dance is kind of, I have a dance nerve inside of me, and whatever, it doesn't matter what kind of music it is, but if it's just the right, then I'm just start dancing.
I feel like it sounds like a big challenge to dance to a cappella, I have to be honest. I'm not sure how that works.
That could be cool.
I would kind of like to soon turn to everybody else who's here, but I thought, are there any, and I want to flip the title around. So it was art and society through feminist degrowth, but what if we said, feminist degrowth through art? Any last reflections on that? Things that we didn't cover in this short chat? Michelle, I feel like there's something right there. Otherwise, we'll have a discussion. So you just.
I think it's better to get prompts if people want to share something or ask something. Yeah.
So if that is the topic at hand, if you'll allow me to flip it around, feminist degrowth through art, through creativity, through creative expression, and I don't know if you're like me, but I would really struggle with an artistic identity. I feel very shy about that and doubtful of my own ability. Maybe folks that showed up in this room don't struggle in that way. But no matter where you're at, you probably have a reaction to this, maybe even something that you've developed or experienced. So maybe we could start with just a couple of minutes of reacting on this topic to one or two people around you, then we can just have a dialogue. So please, maybe share something that has been impactful to you, to those around you. Grab one person.
Yeah, turn to your neighbor. And you have, how many minutes?
It's been a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't. I'm running
a shy, sensitive, as you were saying, self-centered introvert. I still feel that I have a responsibility to try and do my best and fix the very conservative place that I work in. But how do I do degrowth and common and survive?
Nice. Anybody feel like?
Maybe you're a bit.
I mean, like, very briefly, it just makes me giggle when you say that. In some fields, that single authorship is so prestigious, right? In some others, it's normal that you have 100 authors or a group, but there's a lot of value attributed to the single authorship, even when you're writing about something like commenting and comments. That's a great point. Against that, we can strive to collaborate, right? And we could even collaborate transdisciplinarily. What would it mean to have a co-author from outside academia? Would it mean anything to them? It'd be worth asking first. But I mean, and then certainly with junior scholars who don't have any job security, but have a lot to say on the topic. The times I push for that bring me a lot of joy, and it slows down my process in usually a productive way, in a beneficial way. I'm not sure how to answer that. I am struggling with the same question. Great one. Anitra, help us.
I think it's really interesting that you're able to analyse and reflect on that. But I think the thing that most strikes me is this is the problem for all of us everywhere. Because we do live under a really dominating system, and it's become even more obvious with Trump and the authoritarianism from governments. But I think it's right at this point that maybe we do things that are more intuitive. We scream, I really love the way that you expressed yourself, because it actually sounded like a comedian. And I think these are the places that we have to move, and and show bravery against. I mean, we internalize those expectations that academia has of us. How about just challenging it a bit? Yeah, which I'm sure you are.
Yeah, I'm personally outside of academia at this moment. I'm aspiring for going into academia. So I don't have much to say there. But we talk a lot about how, like in the rest of the life, I mean, we have I think there's some things that one can do that are, I don't know what they are, degrowth, feminist, but like trying to, to make sure that if there's marginalized groups or persons in the room, or like if there's somebody not saying anything, or is there, how can I support other female, queers, gays, other groups? How can we share? Is there something we can give, just like what you said, but in a more sort of, also outside academia, I think. One can think about those kind of principles to fight those kind of singularity, linearity, better, bigger, faster, stronger ways of doing stuff, and instead just reverse it. I think you are really good at that too. See, is there somebody I can help? Is there something I can change or stuff like that? I mean, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, I don't know if this is stupid advice. It's just something that we have been talking about and thinking of what are the small kind of things that you can do everywhere, everything, in every situation. Huh?
Yeah, and I'll also say this, it's not very nice to talk against the structures. It's unpleasant, but it's courageous. And I think we need that. Because I feel very often it's hard to create bad atmosphere in the room. So it's always a choice, when do I speak up and when don't I? But I'm trying to speak up when I feel that I can do it in a way where I can actually open. I also believe that it takes time. You speak up a little one time, and then next time you can go a little further and push the same people a little further. That's what I think. Oh, yeah, but anybody else who wanna, yeah?
Thank you very much. Well, I'm a dance artist, and I'm working in my research. I work quite a lot with people who happen to be on the opposition of degrowth. So the people that I work with are quite often men, engineer, CEO, who happen to be very disconnected from their bodies and their emotionality and their subjective point of view. Oh yes, have I mentioned academics as well? So also very disconnected from their subjective point of view. And I was wondering, what is your idea and what is your position of emotionality and the body in the future utopian reimagined structure and society?
I think that's you, Signe.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking about the next question. Being a bit of host. I think that oh my God, I'm sorry, I was very far away from this right now.
I have a small response just to
Yes,
give you a
thank
second. It's a very concrete reaction, and it's not from my own work. I just want to point you to someone else who's been really inspiring to me. You mentioned folks in powerful positions that are disconnected from their emotions and even their bodies and the importance of the things we're talking about today. I'm really inspired by someone named Martin Hultman, for instance, who's been working, he's based at Chalmers University, and he's been working a lot on cultivating ecological masculinity. So basically really working with ideas of manhood and alternatives to hegemonic, what we could colloquially say toxic masculinity, right? That may very well be embodied in these folks you're referring to. And I just had the pleasure of looking at a new paper of his where a small initiative in a wealthy Swedish municipality identified some local leaders, politicians, business leaders, and so forth, and then invited them into an eco-feminist workshop over the span of 8 sessions. It was very experimental. They weren't asked to read big books, but they got little tidbits. And together they got to know each other better, and they also got to know an aspect of their local ecology, a buried waterway, and then they sensed it from above ground and eventually ended up in it. The point is, it's an experiment to give them an alternative way of being men that connect differently with their surroundings and even with each other, and gain a bit of insight from eco-feminist thinking that I just was really inspired by. And it's one version, but I mean, imagine what that could mean if those folks you're thinking of got invited to a session like that. And there are some initiatives and men's network and alliances that are trying to make these opportunities more available. I'd be happy to share that. That was a very kind of pragmatic reaction.
Yeah.
What was the name of the guy?
So Martin Hultman is the scholar activist that I'm referring to, based at Chalmers in Sweden, and he has written a lot on ecological masculinities. I can share it if anyone would like it later.
Yeah, I want to say just one thing, because I just thought about a lot of things at the same time now, and I think just one thing is also to break the ways with how we are not bodies is a resistance, and you can do that in many different ways. But I think for me mostly, I've been working on different levels, both with creating physical art, material art objects like big, what do you call them? Placenta, yeah, like big pillows you can sit in. That's with the cotton weaved material of placenta tissue with hay inside, and that's like a physical art object that can somehow make you transgress some feelings of body and meat and connecting and so on. But I also just think that I have been always, again, very self-centered about my body, And I think that to try to break those things, to try to resist this, to try to, bodies are, sensoric things, you know, but we have to be very respectful for other sensory things. But for me, it was really just like a mind trick to not let that part of others' decisions of what is right and wrong to fuck my head. Sorry, very academic. Any other comments, questions? I just see them.
Okay, I just wanted to say that, you know, the feminine energy, of course, is not always only centered on women, and the feminine energy, I think, is very much about embracing and collaborating, and also inclusion in various ways. And so I think art should be a way to show, instead of being, you know, we are very self-centered as artists, and the art world is very centered, and the single artist is put on a pedestal. But I think collaborative art, and it shows that we together can make something important, should be a very could be a very good way to show this kind of feminist degrowth. And also, I work also in a leisure institution with kids, and I see that they are not at all, they are not interested in collaborating. They're not interested, they want to do things for themselves that they can take home. And I think this is not how kids are when they're born. They share. So how did we get there? You know, what is wrong with our schools and institutions? Because they very quickly swift. It's always there already in kindergarten, in the late years of kindergarten. So I think this is very important to put this, like dancing as well, the body and art into schools, to show that together we can make something, and together we can to take away the center of ourselves and build communities. You know? That's, I don't know.
I want to say something. Sorry. I just think it's so interesting. Thank you for joining the conversation, all of you, because you say the most obvious things for us in Degrowth, that it's all about collaboration.
Yeah.
It's so obvious for us, we don't even talk about it anymore, so it was very nice. Thank you so much to put the light there and focus there. Anybody else?
Still about 5 minutes, so maybe one more question or comment?
Thank you, and thank you for the talk. We already heard of other approaches and visions than degrowth, ecofeminism, commoning, and there are multiple other, solidarity economies, donut economics, and so forth. My experience is that sometimes we are very busy making dividing classifications, be very specific on difference, making hierarchies, and I was just wondering if that urge to find and look for difference and which one is the better one is maybe something we inherit from a very competitive capitalist stance, or am I wrong? Should we look for commonalities and what we share? What are your thoughts on this? And maybe it is particular question within academia for you, Anitra. I don't know. Should we make a strong, broad movement despite differences, or is it important to, emphasize that feminist degrowth is different than X, Y, Z?
I think it is different, and I think that what we should be doing is celebrating diversity in the same way as we should be celebrating diversity in ecologies, in ecological terms. We should be doing that socially and economically and politically. We should be exploring a lot more. We've become so kind of like commodified, standardized, regulated, that I think that this is a way that we need to be fighting and resisting and exploring and loving the kinds of uniquenesses that exist between people, between species, between regions, all of that kind of thing. Yeah. Did you have something?
I'm just thinking about today in class, we talked about classic ideas of triangulating data, right? Getting a multiple empirical confirmation of what you are looking for, so my forestry, quantitative analysis shows this, and then I talk to some people through interviews, and that validates. But a feminist triangulation also invites us to attend to the differences and dwell there and say, why are there differences and what's behind that? In other words, what are the silences as a really important contribution from feminist thinking and knowledge production? So almost coming back to you and saying, no, I think it is important to notice the difference, and then also, thinking with social justice and feminists to accommodate and embrace the diversity too, but with some core fundamentals like valuing that, making space for it. Just a thought.
Yeah, I was also thinking I really like Matthias Schmelzer's core thing that degrowth is a contradictive position. So or a conflict position, he calls it. And that's also diverted from containing everything, or too much diversity, I would say. Because, I mean, in detail within degrowth, there is this turn. Some people or movements are trying to sort of widen degrowth to contain well-being and all of this. Well-being could be great, but then there are certain points where the line is drawn, where you're it's not possible for me, and I really think it is a conflict position. There can't be growth and degrowth at the same time, So.
It is 4:30 now, so I wonder if you all are willing to hang out so that if folks want to continue the conversation.
Yeah. I think it would be nice for everybody when we finish to help gather the chairs. No, don't touch the chairs. It's very nice for everybody to not touch the chairs. And maybe take a soda and a drink and so on, and of course.
Yeah, we can keep talking a little bit, but we have 2 final points, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wanted to actually invite Anitra to tell us about this open access, that means freely available book that's forthcoming, so that we're able to access that if we'd like. Would you?
Yeah. Okay, so the Routledge Handbook on Degrowth is coming. It's actually due for publication on the 25th of June. And of course it's a big thick book with 35 chapters and 55 contributors. And so it's quite expensive, but we've been able to make it open access from the get-go. So I encourage you to go and have a look on the Routledge website.
On the what?
Routledge, Routledge. They're publishers, in London. The book is in 4 parts. So the first is really kind of the ecological, political, and social background, which leads to degrowth becoming a significant movement. In other words, the overexploitation of our ecology, the conflictual social metabolism, and the social and economic and political inequities, but also the fact that most of the 21st century social and environmental movements have adopted kind of horizontal ways of working. And so all of these contextual issues are important in understanding how and why degrowth has become such an important issue right now. And then there are parts, as I mentioned, on regions and ways in which degrowth has grown quite diversely in different regions. There's a whole section on practices, which I think is really interesting because it's like concepts in action, sort of like, well, what does frugal abundance really mean? And the same with commoning, conviviality, all these kind of key terms. And then there's a section on degrowth futures. And of course, degrowth is so holistic. It's really just a little snapshot and samples. If you have a look at the website, you'll be able to see if any of these chapters kind of attract you from wherever you're coming from.
I can say that it was really a pleasure, and it has been really nice to arrange this event. And it all came to because Anitra was reaching out. There is this International Degrowth Network, EDN, and they have a webpage called degrowth.org or something. Yeah. And through that network, along these like museum lines, somehow an email ticked in, and we got the possibility to make this great event with you, Anitra. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Rebecca,
Yes.
and for being a fantastic moderator and a very good friend, and always helping out, and a very good volunteer for all kinds of stuff, demonstrations and other important stuff in this life we live now. And I want to say last thing is that in September the 20th to 21st, thank you to Kip, to Henriette down there, hiding in the back, our collaboration with Islands Brygge Kulturhuset. For the third year in a row, we're going to make a Degrowth festival, and it costs nearly nothing. We have to take a little bit because otherwise people just register and don't come. But it's very cheap, so everybody can afford to come. And it's 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, with inputs, art, workshops, a lot of conversations, sideways conversations, and vegan food. So I hope you will, of course, all come and take part of the conversation. Come with your inputs. I think that was it.
Yeah. Final thing is, did we record from the back?
Yes.
Yeah. So then, if somebody has an issue with this and don't want to partake in the recording, please let us know, me and Signe, and then we will only use this front camera. Yeah.
And the last thing, also thank you, CAPE, Center for Applied Ecological Thinking. We had a collaboration with them about this event, and the most material form of that is the cans out there with very good blood orange sodas. that's part of the collaboration, so we thank CAPE for that.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.